Well, Matt, it's always great to catch up. We're talking here a couple of days in advance of 20 years since the last time that Bedford Blues men's team won a competitive trophy, the Powergen Shield 20 years ago. Take us back to that day, 12th of April, 2005. You're the last captain, men's side, to lift the trophy for Bedford Blues. Your recollection of that day?
Um, 20 years, it's a little while ago now, so slightly hazy. But it was a brilliant day. I mean, it was obviously a hugely proud moment for the club, but also for me as well. I've been very lucky with my career in general, but Twickenham obviously is such a special place. And to make any final there, I was lucky to play in three finals at Twickenham. Yeah, it's an amazing experience, and it's the whole day, meeting up at the club first thing in the morning. Felt like the crack of dawn. We stayed in a hotel locally, and down at the club, but it was absolutely heaving down there, with all the supporters obviously ready to get on their buses as well. The however many 20 odd or 30, I can't remember when it was now, buses that they took down there to take over Twickenham for the morning. So it's just a really positive atmosphere, and it seemed relatively low key in terms of the pressure and the stress. We were very lucky, I suppose, that there were quite a few of us who had experienced Twickenham before. Older heads, dare I say. So, it didn't hold a huge amount of uncertainty for us. Um, and it just sort of felt like another day, really, another game. Obviously, slightly different with the early bus leave, and not usually being seen off by thousands of supporters. Maybe it wasn't thousands, maybe that's my memory. But certainly a lot more supporters there than normally when you'd have left for a game. And then, yeah, to be honest, before the game, I don't remember a huge amount. I remember we got down there, had a team photo, and just sort of got a look around and. Um, got to just to try and soak in a little bit of what Twickenham is for, especially for those that've never been there. And Yeah, it just kind of the normal thing here, warm up and get yourselves ready to go. My one abiding memory was, well, not my one abiding, but one of them is that I had a hugely successful season, winning the toss before the game. And I literally had won every single toss all season. If it was my call, I always called heads, and it came up every single time that season. And I can remember meeting up with the captain and their captain and the ref, and I got to call. So I didn't call heads, and it came up tails. And a lot of the guys knew the success I'd had that year, um, calling the toss. So I thought, you watch, this will be the one that comes up wrong. And sure enough, it came up tails. I was like, well, I'm going to keep that one to myself. I think I'm not sure there's anyone that's particularly superstitious, but probably not just take a risk to worry anyone. I sort of had a bit of a chuckle to myself. But yeah, it was. As I say, I'm not superstitious, and I mean there are players that do have superstitions, but it was just quite funny. Almost relaxed me in a strange way that, oh, do you know what? Who cares? It's just another game of rugby, isn't it?
As the captain, you may not be able to remember particularly the speech as such, but can you remember what your last words were, what Rudy's last words were as you
My
headed out
goodness, my
onto
rousing
the
team
field?
talk. I'm sure it was a rousing team talk. No, I don't remember. If I were to make it now, it would be probably just trying to put a lid on things and just make sure that people weren't overly stressed. Obviously, a bit of stress is good. And I used to do a little bit of tub thumping in my team talks. Get people ready to go for kickoff. But on a day like that, it's probably more the opposite. And actually, yes, of course, we need to be ready to go, but actually, we don't need to get overstressed, and just do our normal thing. So it was much the same, really. Talking about our patterns, talking about how we want to play, and the real priorities, making sure that we got the defense right, and all that kind of stuff. The stuff that I probably heard 1,000 times from most captains, to be honest. I don't know if there was anything earth-shattering. I hope there was, but bear in mind we did have a great first half. Maybe there wasn't.
Yeah, it's fascinating actually here to hear you talking about it as one of the players that had been to Twickenham before. What I've been finding with particularly in the 1975 team about how many players have been telling me, oh well, that was my first time at Twickenham. We were so nervous going down. Three
Yeah.
of Northampton Heineken Cup winning side started in that game for Bedford. So there's three immediately. You would have had other players in other games. But
Sure.
the high pressure thing of a Heineken Cup final, did you kind of just sit there and go, well, this is easy if I've been through that? Is it as simple as that?
Um, I don't know. Funny you talk about how I kept fine. I've just got shivers down the back of my spine. Um, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a game of such enormity. Obviously, the Paragon Shield was amazing, and it was the pinnacle of Championship rugby. But personally, I didn't have the nerves maybe that I would have done. What was it? 5 years before, 5 years prior. But even then, we went going back to those Saints days. We were at the Tetley, whatever what was it called then? It was the Tetley Bitter Cup uh, final that same season, about 3 weeks before, a month before the Heineken Cup final. So we kind of got our experience there, and we were really nervous in that game, and actually didn't play very well. And then came back the second time with a little bit more. Right, this is fine. It's just we've been here, we know the experience, and we're not just here for a good time. Um, so it definitely, I think each time you played, it sort of became more normal. And now I mentioned that, actually, I'm not going there for a good time. I remember using that line. That yes, of course, we're here for a good time, but actually we're here to do a job. And it's not just about enjoy the experience of being at Twickenham. That was probably one of the things that well, I do remember saying. So yeah, maybe it did temper it a little bit. Like I say, not wanting to talk myself up, but it wasn't as enormous a game as 5 years prior to that. So um, yeah, it was for some people, of course, it was huge. It was the pinnacle of a lot of those lads' rugby careers, and I was very aware of that as well. That there were lots of very different emotions. Hopefully, though, the fact that we did have quite a core, as you say, of players who knew Twickenham, had been to Twickenham, played there for, well, some had probably played international matches as well there, to be honest, a couple of the so-called Scottish players that we had. So yeah, it was just another day at the office, I suppose.
I'm going to read you through a couple of lines of what I wrote a couple of years ago to celebrate the 15-year anniversary and just get your reactions to them. And
Sure.
I've gone for quite a solid start, which is the second line of the thing I wrote says Bedford were behind for 74 minutes of the contest.
Yes.
As captain, how cool did you manage to stay in that game when you're under the post? I think Plymouth scored 2 tries that day. When you're under the posts and losing for that long, how do you stay composed? How do you keep believing?
Yeah, it's funny because by my memory, Plymouth probably were favourites, as I remember they were doing better in the league than us. I think they were above us. I think that's as I remember, we'd won at home but lost away to them in the league. And they, ironically, their key player probably was James Pritchard, who was kicking goals for fun for them. And I seem to remember being having a slight feeling of being the underdog. I might have that wrong now. And again, I seem to remember that Pritch got injured relatively early in the game. And I can remember thinking, oh, well, that works. Um, and thinking that actually that was a real positive for us. There was a few things that lined up because they'd been Bristol the week before, or in the semi-final, and Bristol were favourites to walk the whole thing. So you get that little fillip, and you think, oh, okay, well, we probably wouldn't have beaten Bristol, but we could beat Plymouth. So we always had it in us. We knew we had it in us to win. We knew that our style of rugby was very different to theirs, and if we could get our more free flowing game going, then we and get around their two enormous Islander centres that seem to enjoy knocking seven bells out of me most of the game. Um, but we knew that if we could get it wide and expose them out wide, we could do well. And as I say, with Pritch going off, that certainly for me, I didn't discuss it with anyone else, but that gave me a lift for sure. And I think it was at that moment I thought, oh, do you know what? There's a very good chance that we could win this. We had to get it right, and we weren't getting it right. But it was never you go into some games thinking, oh, we could win this, well, we're not going to win it. And my recollection, like I say, it's quite a hazy recollection now, but my recollection was something along those lines that we should should we win it? I don't know, but we definitely we were in with the shouts, and it wasn't a false hope for sure. So yeah, we didn't start particularly well. We didn't play hugely well. They did what we knew they'd do. They got a really strange try from off the back of one of our scrums. I can't remember exactly what happened, but the ball bubbled out, or Dom got intercepted by the 8 or the 9, or I can't remember what. It was a really odd try, which they actually are much better to ship a try like that than a well worked try where you go, my God, they played well to get that try. It's one of those, all right, draw a line under that. That's fine. We'll start again. That's not a problem with our processes or a concern with their processes. That's just these things happen. So that kind of made it a little bit easier. I think if we'd gone 2 good tries down, then you're going to start looking inside a little bit and thinking, well, that they're doing something that we're struggling with. So yeah, there was always the confidence was high. I think it was always high.
You, as you say, build your way back into the game. I don't want to put you in an awkward position as I read this, but
I
it
do.
basically goes along with the, we get the try back to go 13-11, and then we miss the conversion to go level. What can you remember at that moment? Was
Yeah,
there a
Lee
feeling?
Hinton, our metronomical goal kicker, who hardly missed a goal all season, missed a relatively simple conversion. I keep talking about 5 years previous when we won the Heineken Cup and Ronan O'Gara kicked 2 kicks that he would probably kick left-footed most of the time. And so in the back of your mind, think, oh, that's not great. Um, but again, yeah, we got to a stage in the game where we were definitely in the ascendancy and we were building, and it was a little bit of okay, that's fine. We keep going. We can it almost, but potentially when we were still playing catch up rugby, so we still had to keep playing. If you get to a point where your score's level, then it becomes a bit of a who blinks first, and the game you potentially change how you play. If you go ahead, you potentially change how you play, um, consciously or subconsciously. So it possibly sharpened the minds a bit. It kept us going. It kept us knowing we knew we had to keep going, and we had to keep playing, and we had to go and win the game, which obviously in hindsight worked. Whether or not it was because of that or we'd have kicked on anyway. Obviously, you'll never know.
And it's fascinating because actually, if you watch the video, 74 minutes on the clock, you get a penalty. You obviously make the conscious decision to go for the post. That's the obvious thing to do,
For sure.
25 meters out. If you look at where he misses the conversion to where he kicks the
Yep.
penalty, they're pretty much dead on. Like that's
Yep.
some nerves to have to go through that process again, knowing it's not just to put you level and into extra time, but this is to lift the
To
trophy.
potentially win the game. Yes, yeah, you're right. And yeah, he was keen to take it. I was keen for him to take it. I had every faith in him. He'd kicked, as I say, he'd kicked a gazillion goals all season from all over the pitch. And so there was never a doubt in his kicking ability. Um, had he choked? Well, I didn't think he had. I think he just mishit one. And I had every faith in what was the other option from that position. Actually, it's a tough kick to kick the corner. And you're then asking for a few things to work for us to score a try. So yeah, it was the obvious thing to do. I had every faith in Lee, and he had every faith in himself. I do remember asking him if he wanted it. Not sort of. I tried to ask the question in a very positive way. Not sort of, oh, are you sure you want it? But it was like, yeah, Lee, you got this? Do you want it? And he's, yeah, got it. So yeah, it was. I'd be honest. I even know at the time it was 6 minutes to go. I probably did because there'd have been a clock up, and I'm sure would have checked. But it certainly didn't feel like that was the defining moment of the match at that point. Um, and ironically, we kicked it, and as I mentioned just earlier about your mindsets and the way you play changes depending on whether you're behind scores level or ahead. And I think exactly that happened. We, having really closed them out for the most of the second half, really, those last 5 minutes, we were under the pump a little bit because subconsciously we probably tried to sit on the lead.
You hold off, you obviously win the game. That's why we're talking about it. At the end of this article, I've actually wrote a few things. from supporters actually, and one of them I just want to read it to you. Most Blue supporters would probably agree that the Plymouth Albion victory was their favourite ever Bedford match. It's a brilliant day, took most of Bedford down with us, and a fantastic party afterwards. That's still our last trophy the men's team has ever
Yeah.
won. 20 years on, that's still going to be a lot of people's favourite moments. And you were part of that. It must be an incredibly proud moment to know that you were the person that lifted the trophy that day.
Oh, hugely. Yeah, I've said it before. I was so lucky with my rugby career as a whole. Just the fact I got to do my hobby for a living for so long was just phenomenal. But there are moments within that will always stick in the mind. And yeah, that was one of them. And what I was really pleased about in a strange way was the fact that nowadays you get all the razzmatazz and they come out and they put that, not that that was going to happen for our game, but the temporary staging comes out and it's all done on there. And as a kid, I grew up watching teams win the either the Calcutta Cup or England winning, the Calcutta Cup, or teams winning the whatever, they can't think what the knockout cup ever used to be when I was younger. But that archetype of walk up the stairs, shaking hands with people, hugging people, walking across the top again, same thing, and standing there and lifting the trophy. That as a kid, that's my real memory of watching games on telly at Twickenham. And I've always sort of looked at the moments, of course, not taken away from those moments when the people win huge competitions and do it on a temporary stage down on the pitch and all the fireworks and everything else. I'm sure it's amazing, but that wasn't my childhood memory of people winning stuff at Twickenham. So to be able to have done that and think, crikey, I've watched people do this on telly as a nipper. It's kind of surreal, really, because well, I say most people. I would imagine most people. Certainly, I played rugby because I like playing rugby. Okay, I was good at it. So if you're good at it, well, you've played at a high level and you keep playing to the level that you can play. And I did it because I enjoyed it, and I love playing rugby, um, and all the trappings that came with it. The travel, the was playing in front of 75,000 people on an occasion. All that kind of stuff was not part of the plan. Well, there never was a plan, but it wasn't part of the why do I play rugby? I play rugby because I like playing rugby, and you have to play. As I say, I couldn't play local club rugby because I wouldn't have enjoyed it because I would have been too good a standard of player. So I did what I wanted to do because I love playing it. But to then hear other people go, "Oh, that was a defining moment in my life," or I'm sure they had other more defining moments in their lives, but these die-hard fans who I know full well lived for their Saturday afternoon going to watch their team, whether it's Bedford, whether it's any other club. To then have people say, "Oh, that was the defining moment of my rugby following career." It's really strange. It's lovely. It's really lovely, but it's like I say, it's not the reason why I did it. So it's kind of a really pleasant um, side effect, I suppose, of me just chasing an egg for a life.
Yeah, and one of those iconic moments is actually you walking over to the fans. I think the fans are in the East Stand on that day.
Yes.
I think it's you and Junior are holding the shield between you, and it's just a sea of blue in front of
Yeah.
you. Like that's an incredibly special moment as well.
It was brilliant, and I remember, was it Jackie Markham? I think it was, who managed to wangle it that all the Blues supporters got put on that side together because she had, I can't remember, she was involved in the, I can't remember what it was, but she certainly, I'm sure she claimed that she had some involvement in, and you did, even when you came out onto the pitch, for the game, it was this sort of this wall of Bedford Blue noise coming from you, and yeah, to then be able to take the trophy over to them was brilliant. It was yeah, a very special moment.
It would be remiss of us not to talk about your time at Bedford as well. Obviously, that's the high point. Two coaches that you would have worked under, two extremely um, well respected coaches in rugby. I'm not asking you to sort of give any trade secrets about them, but it must have been fantastic at the end of your career to work with Rudy Strowley and Mike Rea. That must have been very special.
Yeah, I was, well, again, I was really lucky. It was funny actually. I signed um, prior to that 2004 2005 season, and the I was down in Cardiff, where actually I knew Mike because he was coaching the academy team, the under-19s down there. So I knew Mike anyway. But my first, sorry, my first communications with the Blues were with Colin Jackson. And so I came up and I met Colin, and we had a really good chat. I then came up a couple of weeks later to sign a contract with him, and bumped into Rudy there. I was like, oh, slightly strange. I didn't at the time didn't twig why Rudy was there, I don't think. And yeah, literally, I signed the contract with Colin, and I think about the day later he announced he was leaving. So I don't know, think they were linked. I'm not sure there was. It was my signing that caused that to happen. But Rudy was well. How do you describe Rudy? He just it was his first coaching role since his South Africa coaching times, which didn't go quite to plan, and lots of stories around what happened there, and um, really sad, really, that's how his South Africa coaching career was defined. But he came to Bedford with a huge reputation. He was just a huge man anyway, and there was a degree of this, well, aura around him. It was like, oh my God, it's Rudy Strowley. Don't get anything wrong with him. But what a lovely man. I remember the first training session we had. We I can't remember if it was before or after the session, but he had everyone that was training into one of the changing rooms, probably beforehand, I guess, just to do a quick intro. And he made some comment, and I can't remember exactly what it was, about something to do with that infamous camp that they had where there was a lot of stories came out post the World Cup when of how people were yeah, the training regime, and he made some comments about it. I can't think what the comment was now, and you could have heard a pin drop because he said, oh, I'm not going to do whatever it was. And you could see these people thinking, I don't know how to respond to this because I don't know the guy. Um, and he just said in his very dry, I'm not even going to try repeat his accent. He said, that was a joke. You can laugh. And everyone went, ah, okay. And that was kind of, that was Rudy. He was a man mammoth. Um, and if you didn't know him, he was blooming scary. Um, but I feel I was quite fortunate to get to know him because I became captain relatively early in that season. And because of the way my work that I was doing at the time, I used to get to training relatively early on a Monday because I was local at the sort of 5 o'clock-ish on a Monday. So there's no point me going home. So I used to go in and we used to sit and talk, plans for the week, plans or debrief on the match on the Saturday, but also, he opened up a little bit about him and um, his life and his family and everything else. And for a guy who had this image, whether or not I don't think it was an image he wanted to portray, but it was an image that I think he held, of being this steely, great, big, scary man. He was very gentle, very kind, and a very humble person. So it was interesting to see the sort of the two sides of what he looks like and actually getting under the skin a little bit. So I feel I was quite lucky in that regard.
And then 3 years with Mike, what was that like? Because he's still going, and
Yeah,
he's,
different.
in 20 years now.
Definitely different. Like I say, I knew Mikey from Cardiff, and was partially, I'm not going to claim it at all, partially involved in his recruitment, in as much as I know there were three names that were touted, and Jeff Irvine. I knew all three people, and Jeff Irvine just asked me about each one of them, and I certainly felt that I think all three would have been were great coaches, but I certainly felt that Mikey would be a great fit with a good bunch of players who, I'm not sure everyone completely got Rudy, or Rudy maybe completely got everyone, but I think in terms of wanting to enjoy what we were doing, wanting to obviously be successful, but it's like with the pressure off, and wanting to be able to express ourselves and play a good brand of rugby, which obviously Mike's been famous for obviously his the best part of 20 years himself now. So yeah, it was a perfect fit really. And a very amenable, really comfortable to talk with him, and used to again meet up with him to sort of make plans or tactics or all those kind of things too. But I think he was more approachable to all of the squad. So I think everyone felt comfortable with Mike at the helm. And yeah, he wants us to play well. He wants us to play exciting rugby. But when we didn't get it right, we certainly knew about it.
Uh, Probably the best place to finish on. We've spoken about the coaches, spoken about the game. Let's talk about a couple of the players, maybe from your time. I'm just thinking of looking at some of the posters we got around the ground and our eco cups and all that kind of stuff. You're obviously on them. Junior
Yeah, that's
Paramore
weird.
is one name that will come up. Ali Heifer, Lee Hinton for what he did in the final.
Yeah.
All those kind of, maybe pick two or three players maybe stand out for you, both on and off the pitch.
Wow, crikey. Standout players. It's so difficult because everyone had their own qualities and their own things that I remember them for. In terms of um, Junior was obviously a legend at the club, a legend of the sport, and I think he'll be the first to admit that he was coming to the end of his career, and maybe, well, he didn't play 80-minute games because it wouldn't be the best way to utilize him. He was a sort of 60-minute player, but you knew full well what you'd get from him. You'd get some really strong carries, you'd get some go forward. So he obviously as a person had a real gravitas. Um, I mean, people like Matt Volland, he was captain when I joined the club, and actually he asked me if I would take over as captain for various reasons. But Q is such a fantastic character. Always got a wise crack to make, but a really kind and genuine person who was light and soul of the changing room, and but kept us together as a group as well in terms of he didn't suffer fools, but he would have a good time, and with that we could all have a good time. But other people as well, John Phillips, who if he wasn't injuring our own players in training or in matches, he was his own inimitable self. And oh, crikey, it's so tough. People like Straussy, Nick Strauss, who Rudy Strowley brought him over from Durban, from Natal Sharks. I think he was in their academy program, and he had great big long, almost dreadlock hair, and he kept getting himself sin binned or he got sent off for one game. And on the Monday after he got sent off, there was a to do and a bit of a set to with a player. He sort of got head to head with this player, and the touch judge claimed to the ref that Straussy had headbutted this guy when they were sort of doing a little bit of the football head-to-head thing. And I really felt it. He was getting picked out because he was so noticeable because of his hair. So he took him to barbers on the Monday morning to get it all shaved off, much to Straussy's disgust. But Straussy was always a great character. It's so hard because every player, James Hinkins, I always got on really well with, who was a stalwart at the club, and just good company who I then ended up being a colleague with as well, at Bedford School. I could go through the whole team, and there's now going to be, if people watch this, they're going to be thinking, oh, why didn't you mention me? I literally I could talk about every single player in that squad, and give you a fond memory of them. So I'll stop now before I'll stop upsetting anyone else.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll wait for you to tell us the list of names that do listen and send you some banter.
Yeah, that could be the
Um,
next installment. Me apologising. I can maybe write down each player and do a little pen portrait on them.
well, Matt, it's been great catching up about this.
No, my pleasure. I mean, like I say, I was so lucky with my rugby. I was so lucky to have had a lot of the experiences I did, but that's one that is right up there, and it's an honour to have had that experience. But it's an honour to talk about it and get that feeling of that nerve tingling, hairs on the back of your neck feeling a couple of times during the conversation. So thank you for letting me indulge myself.